Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how the government will be seeking to put the UK in the driving seat again on climate change with a completely different approach to COP29 later this year, and not before time, because there are going to be difficulties. There are always difficulties, but these ones may be made worse depending on how the US presidential elections go the week before. But first I must just point out, so there's been a major study into the election results come out today. I'll put a link in the description below. It's a huge report, but I am doing a video on it tomorrow as well. And one of the top requirements from Labour voters, it turns out, like the second most important thing they want is, can you dial down the political scandals, please? We'd really like that. So it's remarkable to be able to talk about the UK government doing things which are not completely insane and in fact are going to earn some praise around the world. You know, because it's been reported that the Secretary of State for Energy, Ed Miliband himself, will be attending COP, as you'd expect, but leading the UK delegation. Now, if this makes sense to you, consider that this has not been our standard practice. Our attitude to climate summits over the past few years has been mixed. When we hosted COP26, I will say we made an effort. Alok Sharma represented us. He was a cabinet minister. It was also clear that he took that role seriously, in stark contrast to the behaviour of his party in government going right back to 2010. However, at that summit, we can say the Conservatives put the effort in, even if Boris Johnson somehow fell asleep in the audience next to Sir David Attenborough. But all that wine and cheese will do that, I guess. However, our attitude since been less than inspiring. Rishi Sunak wasted no time in trashing our reputation on climate matters, first of all by scaling back our net zero commitments, just because his brainworm-infected advisors thought, oh, ULEZ won as the Uxbridge by-election, so there must be votes in attacking climate emergency policies. As I've described before, an insane conclusion to come to for three main reasons. First, ULEZ is not about climate change. It's about local air quality. Second, opposition to ULEZ was based on misinformation that Labour were just as bad at communicating. Had Labour snatched the seat, which they almost did regardless, Sunak would not have adopted all of these insane, spurious policies. We knew that as soon as the people of Uxbridge and Ruislip as it was at the time, as soon as they realised what ULEZ actually was, not what they were being told it was, they would go, oh, this is actually fine. And surprise, surprise, Labour took the seat in the general election. It's incredible to think that Sunak changed his entire strategy based on a few hundred votes in one part of outer London on what he knew was a dodgy platform. And the third reason is that the measures he adopted were actually really unpopular, even amongst core Conservative voters. He had to pull them back. But he allowed himself to think he'd found a wedge issue with Labour. He was desperate for one. He was desperate for something to fight Labour with, and he thought this was it. And he went at it like a dog with a bone wrapped in sausages. At the last COP meeting, he turned up for a photo shoot, but then disappeared back again fairly quickly. According to The Guardian, he spent more time travelling to and from the summit than he did in attendance. And he also sent a junior minister to lead the UK delegation, not a cabinet minister. And even they left to come back for a vote on the Rwanda bill at a crucial point in the negotiations. So actually, at the key moment, at the summit, we basically had no ministerial direction at all. At this year's summit, couldn't be more different. Ed Miliband, not just cabinet minister, but the most relevant cabinet minister, you know, being the Secretary of State managing our climate emergency policies. He's not just, you know, the Minister for Energy, for net zero specifically. He's also personally suitable, because it's like he's been in training for this role for years. In fact, he's had this role before. He knows his stuff on the climate emergency. He's an experienced politician. He's already built up respect amongst experts. It helps that the government have now hired some experts instead of lobbyists for the fossil fuel industry. And Ed Miliband has also direct experience. Like I said, he's done this same role when Labour were last in power. As the article points out, Miliband will also be helped by Lammy's efforts. Now, I don't know if Lammy will be in attendance himself. I imagine other global factors could be key there. What will the Foreign Secretary's priority be at the time? But The Guardian did make mention of Lammy's efforts on building relations with the Global South, and that has been a key feature. That I have noticed that. It's been one of his foci in preparing for his role. I actually cannot overstate just how much work, preparation work, David Lammy has been putting into getting ready to run our Foreign Office for years. Ever since he was made Shadow Foreign Secretary, he has been hard at it. He's built relationships with America, not just the White House, which is all too often the focus of our politicians, but Capitol Hill. European countries, also much further afield. Lammy has often talked about needing to consider the needs of the countries in the south, who do often feel understandably aggrieved that northern countries, we've had our benefit from the industrialisation of the last 2.5 centuries. And then just as developing countries are catching up, all of a sudden we go, oh yeah, you need to knock that on the head. It's bad for the environment. So it's not just nationally where there needs to be a redistribution of wealth and opportunities. If we're to save the environment needed to literally sustain human life, we need it globally as well. And although the UK is only one player and, by far and away not the biggest, and, we're going to have to work within our own political framework as well, having this attitude in government will be immensely helpful. But it is another good reason why it would also be immensely helpful if the other major players could continue to hold off electing the crazies, just for a few more years, preferably forever, because it never works out well. I don't know how many times it needs saying. We're at the point in human history now, we can't really afford too many more errors or periods of procrastination. In so many ways, the contrast between the infantile administrations that the Tories gave us and having a serious government is jarring in many ways. We've gone overnight from a government which flips its policies at the drop of a hat to chase a short-term poll boost, which never actually materialised, to one with a long-term plan. From a government that looks for excuses when things go wrong to one that talks about fixing things. I mean, what gets me is how little people ever ask the previous government, how are you going to fix things? Schools and hospitals fall down. What are you going to do to fix the problem? Nothing. But then the media barely asked the question and certainly didn't follow up when it wasn't answered. Domestic energy bills literally doubled. Not due to solar panels, not due to wind farms, due to the increase in the wholesale cost of fossil fuels. What was the Tory response to that? To make us even more reliant on fossil fuels and pretend that low carbon energy, which is immune to instability in petrostates, is somehow costly. Now, of course, simply having a serious government isn't going to make the scales fall from everyone's eyes when it comes to the Conservatives. Only delivering noticeable real life improvements in the standard of living in this country will do that. But having a serious government with a plan, which actually wants to make it happen, makes the delivery way more likely. And if they can also use that same mindset to help deal with the problems that too many people don't even realise we have on a global scale, like the literal future of the species, then all to the better. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for the memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.